with that particular relationship, if she was standing in my position, what would you tell her?
We have a lot of history of always being at odds end, right? I would honestly and earnestly say, can we put our swords down now? Because I'm tired of fighting. It's always been such a, why am I getting emotional? It's always been a contentious thing that it's just we too grown for this. I don't want to do this anymore, And I think, we've gotten way better in the last year, but for so many years, it's been like that where it's just what's the purpose? What's the thing behind it that's causing us to even do that? Why? But it's just stripping down all that stuff and just being open, just yo, this is why I hate you, or this is why I love you, and you know what I'm saying? Just being so open and raw about that. That's how you get to figure out how do we coexist better, and that's how we kind of communicate better. So that's what I would say to her, is just show me all your pain, show me what's really hurting you that's causing you to treat me this way, and vice versa. And then that's how we're gonna finally heal from our past trauma and how we grew up and all this stuff.
What's going on, everybody, on another amazing episode of the Raw Faith Podcast. I am your Austin, aka More Than an Agent, here with the amazing host, Marlyn. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing extremely well. Let's get into it. Today's episode, very interesting, because I think people think that this is an easy topic. Communication. We usually talk about it from a language barrier of just because I'm able to speak the same language as you means that I'm able to communicate as effectively as you. And we've known that whether we are trying to hear our parents, our significant other, our coworkers, or God first and foremost, we usually struggle more than we succeed off the communication end. How do you feel about that?
So to your point, I feel like communication is probably the most important thing in all aspects of life, whether it's your relationship, whether it's relationship at work, your significant other, your parents, your siblings, or anything like that. I think if we don't get that right, we struggle in relationships, period. So I think it's really important. So let's definitely dive in and see how we failed along the way, because I know we're not perfect. Even we've struggled with communication sometimes, oftentimes, actually. So yeah, I'm curious to get into this topic.
Here's an excellent question. Do you think that you are cognizant of how you speak and communicate with others, or do you kind of naturally talk and leave that not up to the other person, but you're just I'm good enough where I'm not trying to spew hate, but then is that good enough for the other person to receive?
So here's the thing. Growing up, I always had no filter. I was known as a person that, Marlene has no filter, right? Even to this day, sometimes I don't. But I've gotten better, right? Because obviously I'm not perfect, but
Where do you think
along the
that comes
way,
from?
being Dominican, I don't know.
Okay.
Is that not fair enough? No, I'm just kidding. But I think the way that we grew up, right? I think we grew up in a very just say whatever comes to mind, and nobody has to correct nobody because it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So because we had that openness and communication, even with our parents or with our siblings, that no one really corrected that. And no one really told us yeah, you can't just be out here with the tongue like that. You know what I'm saying? So that's just how we communicated. But as I grew older and as I learned, obviously, you can't talk like that. You can't talk like that everywhere, Even sometimes at work, sometimes I have to catch myself and I'm like, ooh, girl, sometimes, you gotta be a little bit more PC, and I'm not used to that, right? But I think sometimes I do alter the way that I communicate depending on my audience, to your point, right? It's if I'm speaking to you as a friend versus if I'm speaking to somebody at work, yeah, I'm gonna change my communication style, right? But I think that sometimes I don't, right? It's like code switch. I don't code switch. I don't know how to code switch. That's not a thing.
Do you think that communication in general, when the stakes are higher, have an impact on how you actually communicate with the individual, even though no matter who the individual is, they deserve the same base level of effective communication?
That's a great question. I think sometimes when you're comfortable with someone, sometimes you tend to be a little bit more
Yeah.
lax
Yeah.
in that level of respect, for lack of a better
Yes.
word, that you give
Yes.
someone when you're communicating with them. And that's not okay, right? But I think even
Mm,
like in relationships, sometimes we get so comfortable with our partner that we talk at the side of our mouth sometimes and we don't
mm,
realize that, right? Because there's just this comfort level. And sometimes we have to reel that back and we have to figure out, okay, what's the proper way to communicate to that individual where I'm still showing them respect,
yeah.
where I'm still allowing there to be dialogue between the two, where it's not just like me, you know, speaking to them any kind of way I want, but then also having a level of understanding in our communication. Because sometimes you could just you can just talk.
Right.
And what are you talking about, right? It's like, is there an understanding within that communication that you guys are having? Does that make sense? Like,
Perfect sense. Here's an interesting question. At what threshold
mm,
is there, like, bro, I'm communicating very effectively, bro. You just like, come on now.
oh,
Because it does take the other person to be able to receive it,
right.
right? And there might be a threshold. I don't know, but like, is there a threshold where you're like, bro, I'm communicating as best as I can, and you are just
Well,
making it hard?
I actually want to ask you that question because sometimes we have issues with our communication,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you tell me how, because you sometimes will feel like I'm communicating the best I can. And I'll be like, I still don't, you know what I mean?
My issue is that I try to over explain as a
So
compensation
mansplaining.
from not being heard, right? So, like, I'm the opposite on it, right?
Mm,
Where I didn't see that growing up, right? My family's a little bit more closed tongue. I think I get it from my mom the most. My mom over explains.
really?
And I'm not sure exactly where it comes from. The habit of doing it over and over then created the character of needing to make sure that it is explained, that the person can hear, and that
Mhm.
they feel heard.
But do you feel like that happens because as the person trying to explain, we're not doing a good job explaining, therefore we don't feel like we're being heard? Do you feel like there's any responsibility on the person communicating properly to be heard properly?
You'll always remember the times where you didn't feel heard
Hmm.
rather than the times where somebody was like, hey, listen, you have an amazing gift. Keep talking. Does that make sense?
Kind of. But see, but my question is, once you get older, right? Forget the adolescence.
Mm?
Once you get older, is it not your responsibility to make sure that your level of communication is up to par? Meaning that whatever you are communicating is being heard because you're communicating it effectively, right? Because there's that
It is
ownership
your
of,
responsibility. That does not negate whether you actually have the skill.
well, that's what I'm saying. Develop the skill. If you have a fear of being misheard or misunderstood, potentially because of how you communicate, right? Let's just say that it's that. Then wouldn't you want to take on that skill of like, hey, listen, I'm oftentimes misunderstood because of the way that I communicate. Let me work on developing better communication skills so that that's not a thing that happens where I don't feel misunderstood or misheard because
So
of the
I
way I
don't believe that
communicate.
I'm misunderstood. I just
Okay,
think that I over elaborate
but
in a place where
why?
I just mentioned the reason why. So it's not about like me being understood. It's more of an overcompensation of making sure that you're heard, even though they got the point way before.
But see, maybe I'm still missing the point. I'm still not understanding the childhood trauma or experience that causes you to mansplain or whatever. You know, like I don't get it. I don't. I'm missing the correlation.
Yeah. So like I said, so the overcompensation comes from like just habit of what it's like feeling that you don't have
A
a
voice, like
voice.
so you ignored as a child,
No, I
right? So
can't.
like I'm
No,
trying
I
to
can't say
understand where
that
it
I
comes
was
from.
ignored as a child, but because my family didn't talk about things,
Got you.
that when it came time to talk about it, you have to feel like you have to over explain so that way you know that okay, we don't really talk about things. So by the
Mm,
time that I do, I gotta make sure that when I do open my mouth, it's for a very good reason.
got you. Okay.
And for guys, explaining comes from a portion of teaching.
Okay. Tell me more so that I understand and not misunderstand.
I think girls like to be taught, and
What are you
I
saying?
think girls like to be taught. Like yo, like we talked about it before. You were like yo, I like with your ex. You was like yo, I love the fact that he just knew random facts.
Which ex we talking about? Oh, you talking about my first ex?
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
I just said
Yeah. Yeah.
ex,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you said that you love the fact that he just knew random stuff and can teach you random stuff, and you were like yo,
Yeah.
how do you know that?
I just like
But
it. It was
again,
nerdy, but yeah.
sure,
Anyway.
right? But like there was, but you know that part, right?
Mm,
So Part of it is that, but what doesn't help me is just the fact that I'm in an industry in which I really have to break things down to a very simple thing.
Okay.
Combine that with my natural want, and yes, I can be a rambler, but like
Hey, as long as you know. No, I'm so
yeah, no, I just, in real estate, obviously, it's the biggest financial decision, right? That anybody's about to spend. And you want to make sure that that individual knows everything.
But okay, so here's the thing. Someone knowing everything and then rambling,
Correct.
where's the correlation there? And why do you feel like you naturally ramble?
Yeah, so again, like if I had to take my faults with my fruitions, right? I've gotten way further. 80% of like my stuff is like off of my gift of gab, and 20% has got me into trouble, right? But it doesn't change that I've gotten way further with my inequities than I have not been able to.
Do you feel like because I know we talked about this earlier, like, oh, well, why, you know, change my communication style now if this is how I speak, blah, blah, blah. But like, what if there were communication skills that were developed further that would get you even further than where you
I
are
think they can
now?
always be
Right?
enhanced. Absolutely.
Me too. Are you kidding me? Growing up, I used to I thought I was a thug. Like I used to talk crazy, but I talk differently now because I've learned, right? And obviously being in corporate, you kind of have to, right? So you have to assimilate, for lack of a better word and kind of terms there. But like that's the truth. If I walked into the corporate world speaking like a thug, that's not gonna work. You know what I'm saying? Like even saying that, that's not gonna work. That sounds really like that's not, that's not proper communication, right? So like I think in general, we should always strive to learn to develop better communication skills in any aspect of our
Yeah,
lives,
for
right?
sure.
Even when even as a friend, right? Earlier, I was communicating to you, I have an issue. You know what I mean? Like being able to communicate that, like that takes skill because I could have just, that could have been a bigger issue, right? It could have been a bigger issue if I didn't come to it with the proper communication skills. Obviously, I could have been better, but like, you see what I'm saying? Like communication as a whole is a healthy thing to try to develop more and more as we get older so that we can diffuse situations, so that we can just have healthier lives, period.
No, I feel that. So yeah, no, we all have to do it better. I mean, it's just the one thing that I think is again very simple but very complex in its nature, and we always just want to be mindful as possible.
Yeah.
And that's why I was asking, like, do you think there's a threshold? So we'll leave it at this. Do you think that there's a threshold where, bro, I've done the work, I've done the skill, I practice, I got the skills. You just not hearing me, bro. Like, is it like? Do you think that there's a threshold, or do you still leave it on the individual that is communicating? Leave it up to them to make sure that the person that is being communicated to can understand you.
That's a good point. If I think I understand it correctly, it's just like we don't have control on how our message is received. We don't,
Right.
right? Because that at that point it's control. I cannot control how you receive what I say. What I can do is control how I say what I say so that it lands well enough for you to receive it with open arms instead of with closed fists. You know what I'm saying? So I want to make sure that whatever I'm saying it in love. I'm saying it in peace and with clarity and not, with a hidden message. You know what I mean? As long as I communicate it in that way, then how you receive it is up to you. I did my
Correct.
part, right? I can't control how the other person receives it, but I can control what comes out of my mouth,
Yeah.
right? So I'll leave it at that, but I think that's kind of the best way to learn to communicate is do your part. How they receive it, that's on them.
I love that. In Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29, is my communication healing or harming? Because the verse it says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up, that it may benefit those who listen.
And you know what I hear when I hear that is don't gossip. And I've gossiped
Okay.
before. Are you kidding me? We all have. Like, who hasn't sat there and talked a bunch of crap about something or someone? We all have. Like, right? This is a Raw Faith podcast.
Yeah,
Let's admit that we have.
Of course. Gossip is one. It's just one form of it. I'll bring it back with, I remember the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yes, I read that.
And it's a very good book. How to Win Friends and Influence People did teach me that, like, listen, everybody has their own agenda. And at the end of the day, they're always going to see I as themselves.
Right.
And the moment that you say, hey, listen, you did such and such, they will interpret that as you are attacking their entire world.
Right. So one of the things that I learned through therapy was the I feel instead of pointing the finger as to what the other person did wrong. Just say, hey, when you do this, I feel this, or I feel this when blah blah blah. You know what I mean? Instead of, does that make sense? So that's also another good way to learn how to communicate better, is making sure you're not pointing the finger at the person that you feel is potentially at fault at something. Just tell them how you feel. Focus on your feeling and make it about you versus about them. Because once you point the finger and just like, you know what I mean? Then that leads them to build up a defense. Does that make sense? Now you're defensive coming into the conversation. Does that make sense?
When that happens, you're still bringing it on onus of you, and that other person is just hearing, all right, I made you feel X, Y, and Z. Now, there's a good and bad thing about that.
Sure.
Here's what I do think is the most effective.
Okay, go ahead.
It's called like criticism sandwich.
Okay, go ahead.
Right?
Compliment, criticism.
Compliment first, criticism, and then compliment.
Yeah, but now it's like
it's a skill. But what I do realize is that if you ever want to get somebody to do something, always make it seem like it was their decision, not yours.
Give me an example of what you're saying.
Give me a flaw. I'm not calling out a flaw. Give me a flaw that you know within yourself, communication-wise.
Communication-wise?
Let's go with filter. You said filter before.
Okay, sure.
Right?
Sure,
filter.
Sure.
I can go like, hey, listen, 3 types of ways. The first way that we talked about, direct, which doesn't work. Yo, your filter's off. I hate it. I don't like it. Right? Doesn't work. The second way is how you were saying it. Like, listen, your filter makes me feel that if da-da-da, X, Y, and Z. And you might be able to understand it, right? You might be able to. The third way is like, listen, your honesty is actually genuinely appreciated.
Fair.
It's actually really, really good. I actually wish that more people were like you, where you can be as honest as possible. And I'm thankful that we have the relationship where you can be as open and feel absolutely amazing to feel or to be able to communicate however you want. That's a really good thing with relationships. I actually genuinely appreciate that. The one thing, right, if we can change, or here's where I think, where you would be in a much better space to even feel even more open to communicate however you want to, is that when you're talking to me in this particular manner, just think about this, so that way I can give you everything I need for you to stay in a space where you can continue to communicate as open, as freely as I know that you naturally are able to. Okay, here's an interesting question. In biology, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Why is listening so much harder than talking?
Well, first, I feel like you have to be interested in what the person has to say in order to listen. That's number one.
Are we naturally better at listening than speaking?
No, I think naturally people like to talk, right? A lot of people aren't heard, so they talk more because they want to feel heard. And they think by talking more, they're going to be heard more, which that's not always the case, right? Sometimes that silence speaks a lot louder than words, right? So sometimes we do have to practice being quiet. I remember a friend that's no longer my friend, but a friend told me that, not that I talk too much, but that if there's a group of us, I would most likely be the one talking and everybody else would be either doing whatever else they would be doing, but I would be the one talking. And at first I took offense to that because I was just like, it's not that I like to talk. It's just I have something to say, or I articulate myself differently and I want to communicate it. But I took that as like a jab. But then I was like, well, no, I know how to be silent and I know how to listen and I know how to engage with people and all of that. So I started practicing more of that listening a little bit more just because of that. And not only because of that, but it made me feel like, well, maybe I do need to listen more and not talk as much, but still talk when I have something to say. You know what I'm saying? I don't think I just blabber. I'm not a blabber. I feel like when I have something to say, it's genuinely something of value. At least I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my thought.
No, you're not a blabber. I'm the blabber, right?
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm the blabber. You're not a blabber.
I appreciate
yours is the
it.
filter thing, and mine is
Yeah, there you
the
go.
talking too much. That piques my curiosity because, like, you know, when people actually know who you are as a person,
That part.
like, talking too much is not your thing. When you felt that it was an attack, like, why did you feel that? If, like, you know humbly that that's not you.
Because I think there was a part of feeling misunderstood or you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
well, this person then doesn't know me. If they think that, then they don't really know me. Then why are we friends? You know, that part,
Gotcha.
which allowed me to reevaluate my friendship because I'm like, well, I want to be around people that know me or want to get to know me and wouldn't say something like that because I think my communication style isn't that bad. I mean, can
Right.
I improve? Absolutely. We all can, right? But to say that I talk a lot or too much was like, well, then maybe we don't need to be friends because
Yeah.
that's not the truth. But that's a whole side note. But either way, I mean, it just allowed me to reevaluate the way in which I do communicate. And honestly, the reason why I wanted to start this podcast is just like, no, I have something to say
Yeah.
and others to say as well, right? Like I want to be able to hear and listen to what other people have to say.
That's the reason why I asked, like, before, what's that imaginary threshold, right? And the reason why I say that is because, to your point, am I talking fast or are you listening slow, right? Like, do you think that I'm talking too much just because people
Right.
naturally gravitate towards me
Mm,
and I can be in front of multiple people in which they don't feel like they're isolated?
mm-hmm.
Is it your insecurity that is making you feel like I quote unquote talk too much?
That part.
Or the fact that, listen, if there's 8 people around and nobody's talking, and because I'm taking the liberty of creating a vibe
Right.
from all of y'all non-verbal, clearly, that now I'm the culprit
Right.
of, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, like,
And
that's
that's
why I
how
was
I
asking, like, what's the threshold between,
right.
hey, no, I'm communicating as best as I can, you suck at listening,
Right.
or the threshold of, no, I'm not trying to
Mm-hmm.
take over a conversation or be the one that everybody's gravitating towards,
Mm-hmm.
but it is a natural gift where I'm okay with being not the center of attention,
Right.
but the focal point of distribution. And there's a difference.
I think there's a big difference. I think I'm the type of person that I'm used to walking into a room and I can draw the attention, but not in a boastful way, in a way of
Right.
like, hey, people are gonna want to listen to what I have to say, right? Again, not in a boastful way, but I have that energy about me. But I think to your point, they did not or do not. Either way, I've learned that everybody has their own communication style and knowing your audience matters, right? So in that particular situation, I learned my audience. I learned, well, maybe around that person, maybe I won't speak as much because maybe they don't want to hear or don't want to listen or whatever, you know what I mean? So knowing your audience is key to communication, right? Knowing who and what you're saying, who you're saying something to and what you're saying matters. And sometimes silence is a lot more powerful than having to say anything. Sometimes I
150%.
could just give you the look and that's enough. You know what I'm saying? Like, but either way, yeah.
No, I love it. I love it. James chapter 1, verse 19. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry.
Yeah.
Now listen, what is simple is not always easy.
Yeah.
Cause slow to anger, there's some points where, like, somebody, you know what I mean? It's just like, bro, like, okay,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Last question before the next topic. What, if there are any techniques or if there was a point in time which helped you develop the skill, how are you when listening, when you feel that rage internally? It's brewing, it's storming, it's there. How do you make sure that it stays inside and doesn't come out?
Oof, that is probably one of the hardest things. And not to say that I get angry, but if my temper,
Frustration.
frustration, perfect word. If my frustration is bubbling up inside, sometimes I'm going to be honest, right? It does come out. And sometimes I am a little bit like feistier than normal or reactive, right? But I think what I've learned, especially recently with like a lot of work situations, is that I have to take a step back and I have to literally and figuratively like breathe through it and literally like inhale and exhale, right? That's number one, right? So that I can calm the emotions that are happening on the inside so that then they don't come out through my mouth kind of thing, literally and figuratively. I need to practice those types of calming methods so that my response isn't irrational, right? Because if I'm in my emotion, like we were talking earlier, if I'm in my emotion, a different level of communication is going to come out because I'm human at the end of the day, right? Like I can have a feeling and an emotion and like I might snap and I might, respond the way that I know I shouldn't. But if I calm myself before I respond, then I'm like, you know what? I'm a little bit more level headed. This is how I know I should respond. So therefore, I'm going to use that skill instead. And I can do that real time. It just depends the situation. It depends the severity of the conversation. Like the who matters, right? Like if it's a coworker, I'm like, whatever. But if it's like a friend and I'm like, no, you're really pissing me off, then that matters too. You know what I'm saying?
It does pose another question. If and when that does happen, are you the type to recognize it after and then say something to start as a form of communication? because these are all forms of communication,
Mm-hmm.
right? Are you the one to lead off that conversation with family, friends, coworkers, significant other? Would you be the one to say something after if you recognized it? Or are you more of a passive individual where when they bring it up, then you feel comfortable to be like, I'm glad you brought that. I didn't mean that.
There is nothing passive about me.
Okay. All
And I
right.
think you know that. Like, there's nothing passive about me. I think I know when it's time to let something breathe, and I know when I need to, address something either immediately or take a step back and then address it later, but I address it. I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I let things go unaddressed unless they really don't matter, or unless
Is that addressed when
I'm ready or when they're ready. Is that
addressed when they are the problem? And
Mm,
when I say the problem, not that there's anything wrong with them, but like they could have started some stuff that like creates the problem.
right.
Like when you say that, is that when they're the culprit of the issue?
Mm-hmm.
Or if you maybe said something out of pocket and
Mm-hmm.
then later you're like, no, I said what I said, I just need to let it breathe and then I'm gonna come back. Because it does
That's
take into account how the other person
mm-hmm.
has to then sit with it
Right.
while you're like, no, I just need to breathe real quick.
Well, two things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not responsible for their emotion. If they have a problem with something that I said and maybe I don't recognize it, then it's on them and their responsibility to address it with me, right? Because it's their problem.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a problem
Mm-hmm.
with you, best believe I'm going to address it with you. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The when is the part that I was trying to determine, right? It's just like,
Yeah.
do I address it right then and there if I have a problem with you? Maybe, depending on what the problem is. Or do I recognize in that moment and do I have that awareness where I need to take a pause? And maybe that person's not going to be well enough to receive it
Yeah.
because of the dynamic in that conversation, that maybe I need to talk about it later. So if it's a problem that I'm having with you, but I recognize that you might not be in the right position to receive it, I'm going to wait, but I'm going to bring it back up when it's appropriate. If I feel that it needs to be brought up, right? But if you have a problem with me, I'm not potentially going to bring that back up later because I don't know that you want to bring it back up, right? So you have to let me know, because it takes two to tango, right? You have to let me know that it's a problem, that you want to bring it back up. That's a you thing. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
No, persons. Because of that, if you had to choose, would you rather talk about something up front when it happens, no matter how the person reacts, or would you rather wait if you knew that the person would receive it better, but then you have to deal with not being able to talk about it
Right.
until they're ready to talk
It's a
about it?
great question. And I have dealt with both, where I've tried to address something immediately, and sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't.
Yeah.
So that goes back to knowing your audience. If
Yep.
you don't know who you're speaking with and who you're communicating with, you don't know if they're going to receive that well. And to avoid the trauma and the drama on your end, on my end, right? I'd rather just make sure I know who I'm speaking to before I even decide whether I'm going to address it right then and there or if I'm going to wait, right? So I'll give you an example, not to bring this up, but like kind of have to. With my ex, I knew when I should or when I shouldn't bring something up in that moment, or whether I needed to give it space and time to pause. When someone's angry and they're reactive, that might not be the best time to have that conversation with them, because they're not going to hear you and they're not going to hear what you're saying. So sometimes you know that that person might need a pause. You give them that pause, and that's something that, to your point, I have to deal with. If I know that, hey, it's better to deal with my own feelings by myself than to deal with my feelings and theirs if I address it, I'm good. I'd rather deal with my own feelings.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Than yours and mine. No, I'm good. Like I'd rather not.
So if you had to choose,
I would
what would it
wait.
be?
No,
You
again,
would wait.
knowing no.
You
I
just
have
have to
to
choose.
no, I can't choose. You have to know your audience.
I'm not giving you an example as if you was in this situation tomorrow.
I'm
just
telling you,
asking
you have to know your
for good
audience.
content. If you had to choose, I'm
I
just
guess the
literally,
better
if you
option,
had to,
but here's the thing, the better option would be to wait.
if you had to choose.
However, some things are better addressed immediately. It
If
really
you had to,
depends.
if you
I don't,
if you
bruh,
had to, if you had, this isn't about if you're going to handle things this way going forward. You are not choosing.
right.
You're not choosing that this is how I'm about to handle things from now on until
I'm
the.
just, okay.
If you had to choose one, and you had 5 seconds to choose it. 5, 4, 3,
The more mature
2,
thing to do would be to
5.
wait.
Thank you.
But I don't think that that's
I
accurate.
don't care. That wasn't the question. I
All
only
right.
asked if you had to
Okay.
choose.
Oh, and
I just
I
asked.
want to expand on
I
that.
just asked. We ain't got the time. Here we
Bruh,
go. Here we go.
It's not fair.
There we
But you could
go.
talk all the time. No.
No, and
Good.
and to be honest with you, when I
Good.
talked all the time,
All
the
right.
host was like, "Yeah, bro, you can't be talking all the time." So now I'm doing what I would naturally not do for myself.
That's
Right?
not fair.
That's growth and that's communication on the Raw Face
Okay.
Podcast. Here you go.
Okay.
If you want to elaborate on it, you have all yours.
Okay.
30 seconds, and then give the listeners just something to tap into. You
On
got
this
it.
topic?
On that particular topic.
Oh.
Meaning, I made you choose.
Okay.
Right, and you were like, the more mature thing was like, give us your closing statement on that.
I'll leave them with this. It's obviously to know your audience, right? But
Mhm.
also, if you are the type of person to not come back to something, address it right away. Because sometimes people get comfortable in getting so angry. Like, oh, they're not going to talk about it now. I can get angry and then use that as an escape to get angry so that we don't have to talk about it. That's not okay.
Yeah.
And I do not agree with just brushing things under the rug and never talking about it. If you have a problem with it, if it sits heavy on your heart, talk about it.
Yep.
If that means talking about it immediately, then talk about it immediately.
Gotcha.
But if you are specifically in a relationship, right, making sure that you have that level of communication from the beginning to know, hey, this is how I need to communicate or how I need to be communicated to.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yep.
So like if my partner tells me, hey, no, I don't want to talk about things right away because I need time, then I know that. But if I tell them, hey, I want to talk about things right away, then we have to find a equal balance. Maybe it's 5 minutes instead of right away, but it's not the next day. You see what I'm saying? Like understanding that will be helpful in figuring out better communication styles.
I'm here for it. This is an interesting one. Do my words reflect my heart or just my mood at the current time?
Can you elaborate on that question?
Sure. The same way in which we usually listen to respond instead of to hear the other individual, sometimes the storm that's brewing in our own selves, we might respond to how we're feeling instead of listening to what our heart actually does feel. Heart wise, you know that individual was not genuinely trying to hurt you.
If you know that individual to that level, yeah, sure.
Correct. And we're not talking about like an abusive nature, but we're just talking about like the nicest of two individuals. You and a family member, you and a coworker, you and a significant other. There's plenty of relationships, and we're like, we know the individual's true heart. But because we felt hurt by them, that we want to try to respond in a hurt manner or to possibly even hurt them, right? Listening to our heart knows that that person's not genuinely trying to hurt you. And if we took a little bit, we would probably respond in a different manner, to your point. But the question is, do my words reflect my heart or just my mood?
My words, meaning the things that come out of my mouth.
Do they reflect your heart
Well,
or your mood?
They should reflect your heart, right?
Okay.
The way in which we speak, the power of the tongue, right? We should be speaking in truth. And I feel like if our emotions are what are leading our speech, then oftentimes we're going to be speaking out of character because our emotions have power sometimes, and too much power, especially if it's a bad emotion. If it's a good emotion, then obviously we're, aligned with our heart. But I feel like if it's a bad emotion, then we tend to say things we don't mean. We tend to hurt people. We tend to look at the bad side of things. Our mood should not be leading us. That's like our flesh leading us, and our flesh should not be leading us.
When that happens, because we're all normal, we're all human, and when that happens, I've been in a situation before, and you're being spoken to in a manner where you want to hurt the other person.
That's a character flaw.
I don't think we naturally want to. I think it's a byproduct.
Have you done that?
Of saying things to hurt somebody? Yeah, I'm normal. Yeah.
I know, I've experienced it.
You don't, but you don't lead with it. It's usually coming from a place where you feel hurt, or usually 100% of the time that happens where you're trying to, is because somebody said something that hurt you. And you're coming from a space where, especially in very, very close friendships, family.
I was going to say family.
Close,
I don't think I've ever did that with my friends.
Close relationships, friends, family, significant other, you know the things that can hurt the other person, right? And this happens on all levels, no matter what. I guess my question is, when that does happen, how do we find forgiveness of self when that does happen, on top of being respectful that the other person, and we were talking about before, how they take it is not on me. kind
Right.
of.
Right.
But if you say some wild things,
Sure, you have to watch your tongue, absolutely. Then you are
and if that
responsible for what you say. But that's why I said what you say, how you say it is your responsibility. How they receive it is not your responsibility
correct, and it's our responsibility
to say it properly.
to say it properly,
Yeah, that's part of what I said.
which doesn't happen 100% of the
Which
time.
is why that's the part that we're responsible for. We have to work on that. We have to be better. As two people in a relationship, you have to take that accountability and ownership of how you show up in the relationship. So does the other person. But you can't be responsible for how someone else shows up. You just can't.
I agree. So when that does happen,
It's like, worry about yourself, like that part, you know?
so if you're the individual that's the offender, because you talked about it on the receiving end,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're the offender, how do you find forgiveness within self
Oh,
of
within
like,
myself?
yeah, within self of like I shouldn't have like
Oh, I don't be
said
feeling
anything.
guilty when I come out my mouth. I repent and I ask God for forgiveness, but I don't feel guilt for the things that I say or what I do, because I know that at the end of the day, I either, you know, was having a feeling or a mood or whatever, but I ask for forgiveness from God at the end of the day, because I don't live with guilt like that. Like, I don't.
So what you're saying is that it's okay for, would it be okay for people to talk out the side of their mouth and then be like, my fault, bro, my fault, bro. That's not what I meant,
No,
and
that's
I'm
not.
gonna
I'm
go
not
like,
saying it's excusable. What I'm
mm-hmm.
saying is that you shouldn't walk around with guilt and shame just because you do
Right.
something. You know what I'm saying? You can ask for forgiveness and change your behavior and transform and change and shift from that.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean stay stuck there, but it also doesn't mean stay feeling guilty over it. Like, if I'm gonna forgive, I have to remove that shame and that guilt. Otherwise, what are we doing? You know what I mean?
Has anybody ever caught in the wrong side of it, and even though you were able to repent, find forgiveness, and realize that you're just as human and flawed as anybody else, but the other person then changed their entire dynamic on how they like speak with you?
Yeah. I mean, you want me to give you an example?
Sure. And when that person changed, did you find that they changed that where it helped the relationship or it more so hurt?
No, I mean, the example that I can give right now is not a good one at all, and by no means am I proud of it, but it's raw and it's real, right? So there was a situation where me and my sister got into it, and I said some things, she said some things, and we didn't talk for like a whole year,
Mm-hmm.
and probably more. And I didn't ask her for forgiveness. I went to God about that. I was like, you know what, God, maybe I was wrong. She was wrong too. I didn't say, hey, God, can you forgive her for what she did to me? No, it's just like, I just say, God, I'm sorry that that happened. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Could I have gone to her? I could have, but I didn't at that time because we weren't talking, but in my heart, I forgave her. And I hope that God forgave me for how I treated her and vice versa, right? Because we both said things and did things,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it wasn't just a one-way thing. But in that moment, I wasn't like feeling guilt or shame after. It was like, it happened. That's how we chose to speak to each other. We're adults and now we got to move on.
Do you feel that way
And
because you felt like you were right?
no, I don't think anything that I said was right. And neither was what she said was right at all. Neither of us were right in that situation at all. I will say that at
Not
all.
not that part, but just off of the fact that hey, this happened. She was coming at me. I came at her. I made sure that she like don't mess with me. And then that's your like
Mhm.
saving grace as you're like, listen, I was wrong, but she was wilding too, so I'm good. I don't care. But like, was there ever a case where you're the only one feeling that way, and then the
No,
other
because I don't
person?
behave that way. Like, if I don't come out my character unless someone comes out of theirs, you know what I'm saying? So I'm
Mm,
meeting them where they're at type of thing. That's not me. I'm not a fighter in that way. You know what I'm saying? So that's not ever going to be a one-sided situation. It's always a two-sided thing. So I don't want to say I don't initiate types of thing, but I don't. Like, that's not my character. Does that make sense?
no, it makes perfect sense. And then from a spiritual and godlike manner, which is very challenging. Again, raw and real,
Mm,
right? But in the Bible, it's turn the other cheek.
sometimes, but no, nah. If you need to hear it, you gonna hear it. I'm sorry. Like, no, nope. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
now that's
I'm
fair.
sorry.
No,
That's
no,
the
it's
raw
real.
faith, right? Like,
But
that's.
how do we? Because in
Mm.
theory, the best way to go about that is to turn the other cheek if we want to be more Christ-like,
Correct.
right? So how do we do so, or are we just accepting like, bro, listen, you put me on this earth and you put me with flaws, I tried, but
Right.
she pushing it
No, no,
like,
no, no. I think it's a balancing act, right? I think it's a
yeah,
balancing act of like knowing the the when and where. Sometimes some people do need to be put in their place. I'm sorry. I'm
of
not gonna
course,
lie. I
yeah,
think we
yeah,
all know that, right? If we're keeping it 100% real, like, some people do need to be put in their place, and then that's how they learn. Other
yeah,
times you
yeah,
do need to leave it to God, and God will handle it. I think in that particular situation, number one, I feel like, should I have been better at communicating and managing my emotions and feelings 1,000%.
Right.
But at that time I didn't. Am I going to feel guilt over it? No. But what I am going to do is in the next time as I continue to grow and learn is, hey, I'm going to do this differently next time if there's a next time. However, I'm also going to practice for there not to be a next time if
Is
I
that
care
next
about
time
that
with,
relationship.
is that the next time just with your sister or the individual that it happened?
With anyone, with anyone.
And then has that shown up where you've seen the difference in how, like, has that challenge been presented to you again where you were
Yeah.
like, oh, I remember this,
Yeah.
and then was able to be like, nah, I'm
Yeah,
just gonna.
absolutely. I think
That's
you
awesome.
practice having to not bite your tongue, but knowing like, is it worth it?
Yeah.
Is it worth it for me to get into it again with her and not talk for another year? It's like, what's the purpose behind it? You know what I'm saying? Like now we're both better at managing our emotions towards one another that it hasn't happened just yet, knock on wood. But you know what I'm saying? But could it happen? Is there a possibility for it to happen? Absolutely, because we're human, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that we have to stay stuck there. It doesn't mean that like that's what God wants for us, because obviously he doesn't. You know, he wants us to be able to reconcile at the end of the day. But if we don't, we also can't sit around with that weight on ourselves and feeling guilt and shame. It happened. Move on. Grow from it. How do you communicate better the next time and the next time? Because we might mess up again. We might come out our face and, you know, we might. But I don't want to stay stuck there. I don't. I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to keep growing. I'm going to keep figuring out ways to better communicate with her in the future. And if it means biting my tongue, then I might have to, if I care enough about that relationship to save grace. Sometimes you do have to bite your tongue, but you have to choose who and when you bite your tongue, because it ain't gonna be all the time, because no one's gonna just walk all over you either.
For that particular relationship, if she was standing in my position, what would you tell her?
Right now.
Yeah.
Ooh, you gonna try to get me emotional, huh?
What would you tell her?
Ooh, that's deep. Well, we have a lot of history. Obviously, this is my twin sister that I'm talking about, by the way. We have a lot of history of always being at odds end, right? I would honestly and earnestly say, can we put our swords down now? You know, because I'm tired of fighting. You know, it's always been such a, ooh, why am I getting emotional? It's always been a
Good question.
contentious thing that it's just like, we too grown for this. I don't want to do this anymore, you know? And I think we've gotten way better in the last year. But for so many years, it's been like that, where it's just like, what's the purpose? What's the thing behind it that's causing us to even do that? Like, why? But it's just stripping down all that stuff and just being open, just like, yo, this is why I hate you, or this is why I love you. And you know what I'm saying? Just being so open and raw about that. That's how you get to figure out how do we coexist better. And that's how we kind of communicate better. So that's what I would say to her, is just show me all your pain. Like, show me what's really hurting you that's causing you to treat me this way, and vice versa. And then that's how we're going to finally heal from our past trauma and how we grew up and all the stuff. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. From a communication aspect of it, if you were speaking that to her, do you think that she would be as open?
Receptive? It depends. She's not really a mushy type of person, so like she may
You don't
not
have to be
be.
mushy
I
to
mean,
communicate.
you know, but stuff like that and talking about our childhood and our past and how we grew up and changing our habits and our ways, that's a mushy thing, you know, for some people to get that deep. So I don't know. Maybe she might be.
It's good because as we start our descent here, this is amazing stuff, and I hope a lot of people, not even hope, I know that a lot of people are going to be able to take away bits and pieces in which they're experiencing that and like in their own life, especially with relationships. And when I say relationships, friends, coworkers, family, significant other, spouse, boyfriend, fiance, so on and so forth, because I realize that it's important for you, and I think it's some of the things that communication is one of those things where it's simple but just not easy at all, and there's so much that goes into the context of communication, which is why it's simple, yes, at its surface, but it's so deep, and it makes things challenging. But how can we use our words to reflect our faith even when we're under emotional pressure? So if your sister's sitting right here and y'all clearly, I know the landscape, the battlefield, right, of what can happen. I hope people really resonated when you were like, yo, can you put your sword down? Because, like, figuratively, you can just see two individuals that are ready to literally cut each other's heads off.
No, like literally.
I know, right? And you, depiction wise, in my head, when you were explaining that, is like you got two people that like are like ready, like, girl, I'll slice every single limb off you. And then I
I'm
genuinely do see you like
Like a posture of
Like,
surrender.
and you see the posture softening, and you're like,
Like you're
yo,
tired.
just
Like you're tired.
please, put mine is down, put yours down,
Yeah.
right? How can we, like, in those cases where we know how gritty it could be, how can we use our words to reflect our faith of, like, this is what I truly want for us, and this is what I know God truly wants for us, even though
Mm-hmm.
you're under the emotional pressure, aka your
Mm-hmm.
sword is down.
Mm-hmm.
You said, like, yo, can you put your sword down? I want to put my sword down. My sword is down, but her sword is like she's about to take a swing, and you like, how do you maintain a state of you can lift your sword even higher? I'm keeping mine down.
So great question. So I'll tell you exactly what I did after that scenario happened. When I got back home, I mean, there were a lot of things that were exchanged, but all I could do was pray.
Mm,
And that night, I just prayed about it. I'm like, God, what happened? And why did that go from 0 to 100 so quick? What was the breakdown in communication that happened that caused it to go from that to that so quickly? And the one thing I can think of was just history. There was,
mm,
you know what I'm saying? There was history there. There was pent up energy and pent up
yeah,
hate or whatever it was between us that caused that to happen. And all I can do is just pray about it and just surrender and just be like, God, I don't want to live like this anymore.
right.
Even if it takes me not talking to her for a year, I rather take that pause so that we can rebuild later, knowing that there is a void, that there is a miss there, not having that person for a year, but knowing that, hey, this is what we've got to do to rebuild, then I'm going to do that. But I prayed about it and I continued to pray about it for a whole year. And, it just led me to continue to soften myself so that I can receive her differently and better, even if she didn't change.
Mm,
Because at the end of the day, it goes back to like we can only control how we show up and how we change our method of communicating. But if that other person decides not to change or doesn't receive your change well, that's on them. But I did my part. And I think doing my part is the prayer part, right? And bringing faith into it and saying, God, I know I lost control. I know that I did not show up well. Teach me how to show up better the next time because
mm,
I didn't get it right this time. And that's my bad. But that's that asking for forgiveness and not feeling guilt for how I showed up in that moment. I didn't feel guilt after that because I let it go because I prayed about it. And I was like, God, take this. And he did what he did with it. And now we have a decently good relationship where we haven't fought in a while.
does she have a faith like you do, or like would you?
She does. I mean, it's a little different, but yeah, everybody has
Okay,
their own journey and all that. So no one's here to judge and say "Hey, mine's better than hers." No, I don't know. Because I'm not her. But does she go to church and believe in God? Yes. I mean, has always? No. We all have our,
right.
moments where we stop and go back and all that stuff. So, but yeah, she does. So,
I love that. For this particular topic, Matthew chapter 12, verses 36 to 37. But I tell you that everyone will have to give account on the day of judgment for every empty word that they have spoken. For by your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned. But when you gave that statement about, I prayed about it, left it up to God, I wanted to soften myself so that way I can receive her. That was powerful because the same depiction or animation, as you can imagine, two people with their swords up.
mhm,
One puts their sword down, the other one still has their sword up. The one that put their sword down is slowly walking towards them, timid, but walking towards them. The other person gets more grounded, is ready
mhm,
to be received with a more animosity, adrenaline's pumping, ready to strike. The person that put their sword down is slowly still walking towards them. They left the sword behind, arms are open.
mhm,
There are no methods of attack
mhm.
here. The person with the sword still sees that as even more of a threat.
They're like, love, no.
They swing and it makes contact with you, but it doesn't injure you and it doesn't bruise you and it doesn't scar you. They strike again, it doesn't hurt you at all. And you're still just walking towards them with open arms. They hit again, nothing happens. To the point where they're just tired of swinging and they get exhausted from swinging to the point where, like, that's the only way that they can put their sword down.
When they tired themselves out.
When they're tired themselves out
Hmm.
of receiving love and trying to fight the love.
That's what God says, love your enemies, right?
No weapon formed against me shall prosper.
Right, right,
It can hurt, it can do damage,
right.
but it won't prosper.
Right. And that's how I feel now. I feel like if we were to ever get into it again, it's just like, it's not going to hurt me. because I know where I stand, with God. And I know that whatever might be said or spewed out about me, it's just like,
And that's the
I know
sword
my God.
literally hitting you. Your sword is down, your arm is down.
Yeah.
As soon as you strikes, it's just like bink and bink.
But the hope
Okay.
is that never even has to happen, right? Like
No,
that
of
it
course not.
just, that both of our swords are down, right? Because it's like, I don't even want to think of it that way of like, she still got it up. It's like, no, I don't believe that. You know what I'm saying? I think
Sure.
it just takes time and, communication and progress and, all that stuff. So,
No, I love it.
yeah.
Marlene, listen, what can we leave our audience with that they can just take just one thing just to try to apply and move forward in their journey just towards better communication, which
Yeah.
inevitably just leads to a much more healthier life.
Yeah.
This is what it is.
Whew, a lot of things, but the one, if I had to choose one, is to choose the feeling you want to feel. So what I mean by that is this, is that we can choose when we're offended by someone, we can choose to feel hurt, or we can choose to try to lead with understanding. And that's part of communication, right? Is how you receive things is part of communication, right? So in that situation, if I were to have led with understanding how she was feeling about whatever was said, even though the intent was not, to be hurtful, then maybe I wouldn't have felt hurt by it, and then it wouldn't have been a back and forth. So choosing your feeling, I think, is important, right? Because I can choose to be angry, I can choose to be happy, I can choose to let something go. It's all a choice, right?
Yeah,
And I know it's harder said than done,
yeah.
obviously, when we're in the moment, but practicing what that looks like will be beneficial in any situation that you put yourself in any dynamic, whether it's work related, whether it's relationship, sister, brother, friend, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's like I can choose to feel hurt by something, or I can choose to say, hey, maybe they didn't intend it this way, and ask to seek more clarity and understanding instead of just assuming the hurt. Because we can get hurt like that. They can say one thing and like, oh, that hurt. But maybe they didn't mean it that way. And again,
Right.
it takes practice, and it takes knowing your audience. Back to that, knowing who can I even ask that from. Like if a friendship between you and I, if I ask you, hey, like if I notice that it hurt, I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to seek to understand instead of assuming the hurt. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how I'm going to practice being a better communicator, being, just a better friend, a better sibling, or whatever, is just doing that, is choosing my feelings wisely, knowing my audience, and communicating in advance of how I want to be communicated to and how they want to be communicated to, and vice versa. I think that's a healthy way to build better relationships, period. So that's what I'll leave
Is that
folks with.
something that can be practiced before the event actually happens?
Absolutely. It's a daily practice, right? It's like
Okay. And what does that look
a
like?
daily conversation of like, even just like, let's say we get mad at each other one day and it's not a big deal, but like in the future, it might be a bigger deal. Me telling you, hey, in the future, like, can we communicate this way instead? Because this is like, we just did it earlier. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I said, hey, let's create the safe space, because when I say I'm upset about something and you react this way, that's not helpful. That's communication.
It's challenging.
Very challenging. That's why we have to choose our feelings first. So in that moment, you could have chose not to feel slighted by what I had said, right? And sought to understand and sought to ask questions instead of feeling defensive about it. Do you see what I'm saying? Because it was my feeling that I was expressing. Although it may have impacted you, you could have still asked the question in curiosity of my feeling first, since it was my feeling, and then introduced your feeling. But the person's feeling who's telling you, hey, that I have a problem, be concerned with that. That's the whole relationship building with people. It's just like, be concerned with people. You know what I'm saying?
I literally inquired. I did not bring my feelings. I literally asked. And I was like, what happened? And you were like, I don't want to tell you.
And then we should have dropped it there, but then it kept going, right? So like stuff like that. It's just like, sometimes just if they say, hey, I can't talk about it right now, have that level of understanding for what that person needs and say, okay. And put your own, sometimes we do have to put our own feelings aside and say, you know what? I might feel slighted because they're saying that I'm the issue. I don't know what the issue is, but you know what? To save face and to not create an argument, let me just hold back and let me communicate with them when they're ready. That's going back to the, what's the healthier thing to do, is wait until they're ready, right?
We're going to lead out in prayer.
Because we could have kept going, right?
We're going to lead out in prayer
Okay.
in this particular case.
Father God, I thank you. I thank you that you don't keep us the same, that you allow us to grow and to change, and that just because we've miscommunicated in the past or have had, difficult conversations with loved ones or people that we care about, God, that you don't keep us there, and that you allow us to not feel guilt or shame for our mistakes, and that you allow us to just grow from it and change and just give it to you, God, and that we don't have to be perfect. Just because we're Christians, we don't have to get it right all the time. We're gonna mess up, and that's part of the rawness and the realness of this, is just saying exactly what we went through and how we did things that maybe weren't the best, and how do we do it better the next time, right? It's all about growth at the end of the day. Is how do we continue to transform and shift and just continue to just excel and just be better communicators. God, I pray that you allow everybody that's watching to learn what it looks like to go from one season to the next, and to say, hey, I did not do this well in this season, but in the next season, I'm going to choose to do it better, and I'm going to choose to do it differently, whether it's communication, whether it's hearing someone out, whether it's just having a heart posture to receive what someone else is saying without taking offense. God, I pray that you allow us to just remove the offense from our hearts and our spirits that we feel when we are communicating with one another, God, that it's not about feeling hurt, that it's about just understanding. It's about understanding one another, and that's really what it's about. So I pray that you just give us that heart posture to really just have these deeper, meaningful relationships with one another, where we care for one another, that we don't judge one another, and that we are mindful of our tone and our language and what we say to one another, because things can hurt. Our words do have power, and they do hurt. So I pray that you just shift the way in which we use our words and our mouths, God. I pray that you just give us the ability to just use our words wisely and to just love on one another instead of hurt one another. So God, I thank you that you've given us our mouths and our words to even communicate this out to folks, God, so that they can shift and learn and grow as well. So I thank you, I love you, and pray all these things in your precious mighty name. Amen, amen, and amen.
Amen, amen, amen.
Amen. I always say amen 3 times.
I hope everybody's able to grab at least one thing that they can take away, just implement, or at least be able to second guess if they are about to
Yeah.
act in a manner that maybe might not be the best top notch communication skill. I hope people can also see where they have also failed, faltered in their own communication skills, and know that it's okay in the grand scheme. Just because we're flawed doesn't mean that everything is okay, but it also can mean that we don't have to beat ourselves or feel guilt into perpetuity
Mm-hmm.
when those things do and inevitably will probably in the future will happen.
Use some big words today. No, let me stop.
Listen, we learn something new about each other every single day. This is the Raw Faith Podcast. I am your humble co-host for today, Austin, aka More Than an Agent, here with my amazing, beautiful host, Marlene, and we are signing off.
Peace out.